Today, we are opening one of the darkest files in Mexican crime history.
Mhm.
A case that has haunted Los Angeles for, nearly 80 years now. The unsolved, brutal murder of Elizabeth Short.
Known everywhere as the Black Dahlia.
Exactly.
And we are diving deep into the sources here. Original police reports, forensic analyses, decades of journalistic coverage.
Right.
Our goal isn't just to, recite the grim facts from 1947, is to analyze the institutional chaos, the media frenzy, and the very specific nature of the crime that let this case defy resolution.
Yeah, the mission is to find those nuggets of knowledge hidden under all the sensationalism. Elizabeth Short comes to LA with this dream.
A classic story.
A beautiful, vibrant 22-year-old from Massachusetts. The sources call her a movie-struck girl, hoping to make it big in Hollywood.
But she becomes something so much more infamous, a tragic figure, really, that just cemented itself in the public mind as a symbol of LA's dark side.
That post-war dark side.
And the crime itself, it wasn't just a murder. It was, an extreme, almost theatrical display of violence and precision. It became a cultural touchstone almost immediately, but that intense focus, it actually complicated the facts.
So we have to separate the person from the myth.
We have to. To really grasp the complexity here, you have to understand the young woman who was Elizabeth Short versus the myth of the Black Dahlia.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Who was she before she was defined by her death?
Well, she was Betty, or Beth Short, one of 5 daughters. And her family life was fractured pretty early on.
There was that major trauma in 1930, right, with her father.
Yeah, he faked his own suicide, just abandoned the family. And that really set the stage for a young woman who was, constantly searching for some kind of stability.
A search that tragically led to more heartbreak.
It did. In 1945, her fiancé, Major Matthew Gordon Jr., an Air Force pilot, was killed in a plane crash just 5 days before VJ Day.
Wow.
Sources say she never fully recovered from that loss.
So by the time she gets to Los Angeles in 46, she's really struggling.
She is broke, living hand to mouth. She was often dating men just to get a meal or have a place to stay for the night.
Which the media just ran with later on.
Oh, completely. They leveraged that desperation to paint her as promiscuous, even a prostitute. But people who actually knew her described a more complex picture.
How so?
She was often described as reserved, a little shy, and definitely not the starlet she wanted to be. She never had a single acting credit. Her reality was just so far from the Hollywood glamour.
And you have to understand the city itself at that time. This wasn't the golden age of Hollywood we think of. This was a boom town overflowing with chaos.
Exactly. Post-war LA was flooded with ex-servicemen, hustlers, dreamers, all just like Elizabeth. Housing was scarce, jobs were competitive, and crime was spiking. It was a really volatile environment.
A dangerous place to be desperate.
A perfect storm, really. Desperation meeting new money and moral ambiguity. She was just one of thousands caught in it.
Okay, let's focus on the part that's still the biggest riddle. The missing week.
Right. She was last seen on Thursday, January 9th, 1947. She'd been in San Diego with a man named Robert Red Manley, a married salesman she was dating.
And he dropped her off where?
He dropped her off near the Biltmore Hotel downtown, close to the Crown Grill bar area. And that is the last verified sighting of Elizabeth Short.
And she just vanished. For 6 whole days, nobody knew where she was.
Until January 15th, in a quiet residential area, Limert Park.
This is where the nightmare is discovered.
Yeah. A local mother, Betty Bersinger, was out walking with her child and saw something in a vacant lot. She thought it was a discarded store mannequin.
Because it was so pale, right. Mangled and pale.
Exactly. And the reason for that mistake says everything about the killer's meticulousness. The body was completely drained of blood, not a single drop at the scene.
Confirming the murder happened somewhere else.
Absolutely. The body was moved there after the fact.
The core of the mystery is in the crime scene itself. This wasn't some quick, brutal killing. Her body was naked and bisected.
The medical examiners used a specific term for it, a full hemicorporectomy.
Can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean?
It means the body was cleanly cut in half at the waist, but with surgical precision. There was no damage to the internal organs, no damage to the bone. It suggested the killer had immense anatomical knowledge and, frankly, access to specialized tools.
And beyond the bisection, the facial wounds. They're maybe the most chilling part.
The infamous Glasgow smile.
Slashes running from the corners of her mouth, almost to her ears.
And the autopsy confirmed bruising around those cuts, which means They were inflicted while she was still alive.
So torture, it was intentional humiliation.
Without a doubt. And on top of that, the killer scrubbed the body meticulously, almost obsessively. They found brush bristles embedded in the wounds.
And then posed the body?
Posed it theatrically, yes. Of arms raised above her head, legs spread apart. This was a highly deliberate, ritualized act. This is not a crime of passion.
So once she's identified, the investigation just spirals, but the initial ID was actually shockingly fast.
It was, thanks to a piece of tech that was pretty primitive at the time. They used her fingerprints from a 1943 underage drinking arrest, right, in Santa Barbara, and faxed them using something called sound photo technology. Think of it like a very early fax machine. The FBI confirmed her identity in under an hour.
And once that name Elizabeth Short was out, the media just went nuclear.
Oh, it was a circus. William Randolph Hearst's papers especially turned it into a daily spectacle, competing for scoops, often just inventing details.
And that's where the nickname came from, right? The Black Dahlia.
Yeah, reporters linked her preference for black clothing to the 1946 film, The Blue Dahlia, and it stuck.
The media's behavior got pretty awful, especially with her mother.
It reached an ethical low point with Phoebe Short. An LA Examiner reporter called her not to inform her of her daughter's death, but to deceive her.
He pretended she'd won a beauty contest.
He did, just to coax personal details out of her before dropping the news of her brutal murder. It was vicious. Just a total exploitation. It showed the press cared more about sensationalism than basic human decency.
And it's clear the killer was feeding off this attention. They didn't just hide the body, they displayed it and then started playing games.
Absolutely. A week after the discovery, the killer sends an envelope to the LA Examiner.
Addressed with cut-out newspaper clippings.
A classic sign of someone trying to stay anonymous.
Yeah.
And inside were her personal effects. Birth certificate, photos, and an address book belonging to a nightclub owner named Mark Hansen.
And here's the detail that tells you how forensically aware this killer was.
Every single item.
Wiped clean.
Wiped clean with gasoline. They knew exactly how to destroy fingerprint evidence.
And then the taunting note started.
Signed, Black Dahlia Avenger. The killer promised to turn himself in, then took it back, claiming the police wouldn't give him a square deal. This person wasn't hiding. They were directing the narrative. They wanted to be the center of the spectacle they created.
So you have this combination of surgical precision and forensic awareness, which has to narrow the field of suspects.
It should. And when you dive into the files, you find these persuasive but conflicting theories. And a lot of them involve the LA elite.
Let's start with the most obvious one, the first guy they looked at, Robert Red Manley.
The salesman. The last person known to be with her. Logically, he was the first person they brought in.
And the investigator, they threw everything at him.
They did. Multiple polygraphs. And we have to remember how limited that tech was in 1947. But he passed them. He even agreed to a truth serum test.
Sodium pentothal, which just shows how desperate they were.
It really does. But based on those tests, Manley was cleared pretty early on. The police moved on from a simple boyfriend motive.
Which leads to a much deeper, more complicated theory. The one involving nightclub owner Mark Hansen and a bellboy named Leslie Dillon.
Right. Short had Hansen's address book, which connects her to that high-rolling nightlife scene. Then you have Dillon, an ex-mortuary assistant with a known interest in sadism.
So the theory is a possible gangland execution. Maybe ordered by Hansen, carried out by Dillon.
It's one line of thought, and the evidence linking them is compelling. First, Dillon knew intimate, non-public details about the murder.
Things only the killer would know. And second, there was that discovery at a local motel.
The Asta Motel. The owner claimed he found a room just covered in blood and human waste the morning the body was found.
And he just cleaned it up.
Admitted he cleaned it up illegally, destroying what was likely the primary murder site. If that's true, it points to a dedicated location used for the torture and killing, which again supports the idea of an organized crime.
But if it's a gangland hit, why the theatrics? Why the posing? Gang killings are usually about quick disposal.
That's the tension. The sexual sadism doesn't quite fit a typical gang killing. It makes that whole theory murky.
Which leads us to the suspects whose skills line up perfectly with the crime. Suspect number 3, Dr. Walter Bailey.
A prominent Hollywood surgeon.
And the connection is significant. Dr. Bailey specialized in surgical bisections and notably mastectomies. The bisection of Elizabeth Short's body required that level of skill.
And what's more, he lived just 1 block from where the body was dumped in Leimert Park.
So proximity and means, what about motive?
It's unsettling. Bailey had a brain lesion, which sources suggest could have caused something called an antibiotic personality swing and homicidal rage. There was also a tenuous family link. His adopted daughter was matron of honor at Elizabeth Short's sister's wedding.
So they weren't total strangers.
Possibly not.
That's powerful circumstantial evidence. But there's a hole in it, isn't there? The forensic findings from her stomach.
That's the major problem. The autopsy found industrial fertilizer and feces in her stomach. That strongly suggests she was held and tortured at a more remote, maybe even agricultural location, not a quick kill in a residential house.
Okay, so that brings us to the most infamous suspect of all, the one where this story becomes about institutional corruption.
Dr. George Hodel.
Suspect number 4.
A brilliant physician, IQ of 186, expert in surgery and anatomy. And the case against him was built over decades by his own son, Steve Hodel, a retired LAPD detective.
And the source material here has some utterly damning evidence that came out years later, the wiretaps.
In 1950, the DA's office bugged Hodel's house. And what they captured on those tapes is chilling.
What did she say?
He was recorded saying, and this is a quote, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead."
Wow. And his secretary, Ruth Spalding,
died of a supposed overdose right around that time. The implication is terrifying. And he was also caught on tape talking about making a payoff in the DA's office to shut the investigation down.
And this is where the story shifts. It's not just about forensics anymore. It's about institutional failure.
Completely. You have audio of a prime suspect talking about the murder, talking about a payoff, and yet the investigation into George Hodel just stopped. It ended in 1950.
The LAPD at that time was notoriously corrupt.
Reports and investigations were basically on sale. This points to some kind of political protection or bribery derailing the pursuit of a very skilled killer.
But we have to apply critical thinking here, too, because Steve Hodel, his son, later claimed his father was also the Zodiac killer.
A massive leap.
It's an almost unbelievable leap that makes a lot of people question his objectivity in all of this.
It does, and critics also point to the physical evidence Steve Hodel found. He found photos he claimed were of Elizabeth Short, but a forensic artist later analyzed them and said there was an 85% certainty the woman in the photos was not the victim.
So even the most sensational evidence is full of conflicting details. You have to stay skeptical.
You do.
So what does this all mean? At the end of the day, the sensational nature of the crime, this horrific violence against a young, beautiful woman, it was magnified by an irresponsible media and, it seems, a corrupt system.
Yeah, the sources consistently point to a highly organized killer, someone with professional knowledge, surgical or mortuary, who was also forensically aware.
And when you combine that profile with the clear evidence of Hodel's payoff that shut down the investigation,
it paints a picture of a system that actively protected a killer.
And the ultimate tragedy of the investigation itself is that all the primary physical evidence, the wire recordings, the interviews, the original case notes, they've all just vanished from LAPD files.
Whether it was negligence or deliberate destruction, that absence guarantees the case stays officially unsolved. It elevates the killer to the level of a myth.
But we can say with some confidence that the killer was methodical, sophisticated, and had the skill to do it, and the connections or money to get away with it.
Elizabeth Short came to LA for a dream, but she was robbed of her life and her identity. She became a spectacle, used by the media and shielded from justice by a corrupt system.
The Black Dahlia murder was this unique, highly organized display of sadism. And Dr. George Hodel fled the U.S. just days after the DA stopped investigating, only returning 40 years later. So the provocative thought we'll leave you with is this. When a crime demands professional expertise, and the prime suspect has it, and then avoids prosecution because of alleged corruption, where does the failure of justice truly lie? Is it with the individual monster or with the institution that might have let him walk free? It's a powerful lesson in how corruption can permanently erase accountability.